Good afternoon and welcome to Politics in the Pulpit here on your hometown station, KHTS AM 1220 and 98.1 FM. This is 2026, folks. Happy New Year to you. Hope you've enjoyed your Christmas holidays and family time around the dinner table was hopefully entertaining, good, tasty, hopefully not too many arguments. And here we are back for another opportunity to talk about the two things we're not supposed to talk about in public, but we do anyway, religion and politics, and they do indeed mix. Well, this is our first live show of 2026, and let's just put it this way. There isn't a dull moment. A bunch of breaking news happened just in the last couple hours. In fact, just in the last hour, I got some breaking news that I want to share with you in just a little bit. At the bottom of the hour, we'll be joined by Pastor Levi Secord, who, by the way, I booked a week ago before all this Minnesota stuff started just, falling apart, including the breaking news out of Minneapolis just a couple hours ago. So Pastor Secord will be talking to us not only about his book, but also about the breakdown of the state of Minnesota and all things Somali fraud, Governor Tim Walz, and the shooting of this woman by the ICE agents there in Minneapolis, as well as the mayor of Minneapolis and his, let's just say, his F-bomb that he dropped. So we'll talk about that more at the bottom of the hour. So let's start with more local news, and then we'll move into more national news. But today is the one-year anniversary, believe it or not, of the Palisades fire and the Eaton fires. Not only is it the one-year anniversary of the Palisades fire and the Eaton fires, but it's amazing what 1 year will do. A year ago, we were dry. Actually, we were in the 70s and 80s, and we had Santa Ana winds, if you remember, specifically that day when the Palisades fire broke out. We had some of the worst Santa Ana winds we'd had here in 50 years. And you all remember Mayor Bass was on her little junket somewhere across the globe, and she got caught red-handed, being off and about without being here to represent her constituents. And so here we are a year later, and we've had a ton of rain, and the Santa Ana winds are not nearly as bad as they have been. But you're thinking to yourself, okay, we live in California. It is one of the most populous states in the Union. There are over 40 million people that live here. The majority of them live from the Central Valley down to Southern California. And we have so many government officials, you would think, also, just a side note, sixth largest economy in the world. You would think that we would be on top of the recovery efforts at the Palisades fire. And if you thought that, you would be wrong. 31 people died, 13,000 homes went up in flames, and as of right now, 1 year later, fewer than a dozen homes have been built. Nothing but red tape and rhetoric has accompanied our elected officials. Governor Gavin Newsom, as far as I'm concerned, he's phoning it in, and he's gone by January of next year anyway, and good riddance. But he's phoning it in. He doesn't care. Mayor Karen Bass is just going to kind of, do what she does. She's great with the rhetorical stuff, but in reality, she doesn't care. And we all know what they want. They don't want those individuals to build their homes as they had them before. They wanted to they want to put in some of these 15, minute cities where, everything is right there, and instead of building out, you build up. And so right now, at the same time that I am broadcasting, there is a rally at the Palisades called They Let Us Burn Rally. And it's happening right now. You can probably see it on the news, or maybe there's a live feed on Facebook somewhere. But at this rally, There are several elected officials on the conservative side. I believe Steve Hilton, who's running for Republican governor here in California, is there and is going to be speaking. I know several elected officials, as well as those who are running for office, are also there as well. And of course, hundreds and hundreds of just average folk who are just sick of politics as usual here in the state of California. But the breaking news out of this They Let Us Burn rally in the Palisades is that reality star and outspoken advocate for the victims of the Palisades is Spencer Pratt. Spencer Pratt was there, and he announced a run for the mayor of Los Angeles. Now, that's pretty interesting because Spencer Pratt, if you remember, he kind of went viral over the course of the last year, going on about the governor, going on about the mayor, and going on about local officials just not caring as much about the victims of the Pacific Palisades as they should. And Spencer Pratt, who again is a reality star, which frankly I didn't know that until I saw the news break today, but evidently a reality star. But the only reason why I know him is because of all the X posts that he put out and the videos that he put out on X, basically decrying Mayor Bass and Gavin Newsom and elected officials for basically turning a blind eye to the victims of the Palisades and the Eaton fires. So that's the breaking news here in Los Angeles County. Spencer Pratt, reality star and outspoken advocate for the Palisades fire, is going to be running for L.A. mayor. Now, what does that do for someone like, let's say, I forget that guy's name right now, the rich dude. But anyway, you know what I'm talking about. There's a rich dude that's a Democrat. He was a Republican. Now he's a Democrat. He was thinking about throwing his hat in the race. I don't think he's going to do that. I don't think he's going to run for governor either. But I do think that Spencer Pratt might give Mayor Bass a run for her money. I'm not terribly certain if he'll win because obviously L.A. County and specifically L.A. City is very, 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 very left-wing. And so, again, if you want to check out this They Let Us Burn rally, I'm sure if you type that into your search bar, you'll be able to find that on YouTube or something like that, some sort of live feed. Also, news broke yesterday, even though the actual death of this individual happened on 1/4 of this year. But some of our listeners might remember who Michael Reagan is. Michael Reagan, of course, was the son of Ronald Reagan. And Michael Reagan had a talk show on radio for many, many years, wrote books, was an outspoken advocate for Republican Party as well as a conservative thinker. I believe he worked on Newt Gingrich's campaign and was very instrumental here in California when it came to Republican politics as well. So he passed at the age of 80 just a few days ago, and so our hearts and our prayers go out to the remainder of the Reagan family. In terms of death, here's another just befuddled notion here. Representative Doug LaMalfa. I knew Doug LaMalfa only because he's probably one of the most conservative congresspeople here in the state of California. He died at the age of 65 a couple of days ago. And he is a fourth-generation rice farmer here in California, and he represented much of California's very rural north part of the state in Congress. He died in office, setting off a scramble, I believe, to replace him ahead of the November midterms. He's 65 years old. And again, what does this do? First of all, we lose a good conservative stalwart here in California. But on the other hand, his death also, along with Marjorie Taylor Greene's resignation, is further shrinking the Republican Party's majority in Congress. So as of now, with LaMalfa's death as well as Marjorie Taylor Greene's resignation, the Republicans have a slim 218 majority. Not very many. That means that the GOP can now only afford to lose 2 members on any party line vote. And so I don't exactly know how this district is going to look, especially after the passing of Prop 50 back in November of last year. But the fact of the matter is, it's definitely going to make things a little more complicated, because not only is it possible that LaMalfa, who again is a conservative stalwart, not only died, but we may actually lose his seat because of the whole redistricting process. And so that is an unfortunate reality. Now, when it comes to 2026 and predictions, I do not claim to be a prophet. And if I was, I would probably be stoned a long time ago. However, I did make some predictions back on December 31st, New Year's Eve. And I wanted to go through my 8 predictions real quick here before we get to the bottom of the hour and we get to talk to Levi Secord there in the state of Minnesota. I made 8 predictions that probably won't come to pass. At least some of them won't. I think some of them will. But here are my thoughts for 2026. Number 1, big box megachurches, which I like to call Big Eva, big evangelicalism, will continue to lose attendance and influence. Now, some people are saying, now, how is that possible? Well, I really believe that big box megachurches started losing their attendance and influence during COVID, because they were the first churches to close, and they were the first churches to stay closed the longest. And so I believe that in 2026, big box megachurches will continue to lose attendance and their influence over greater evangelicalism. Second prediction that I made is traditional or masculine churches, which doesn't mean only men-attended churches, but traditional masculine churches will gain in attendance and will gain in influence. And when I say traditional masculine churches, I'm talking about more traditional churches in terms of their worship, more structured, more liturgical, less fog machine reliant, less rock and roll, praise band type stuff, which of course, you walk into a church today and a lot of the times it feels more like a rock concert than it does a church service. And I think those kinds of churches are kind of losing their influence, and the more traditional masculine churches are going to gain in attendance and influence, and you're already seeing that happen already. Thirdly, my third prediction was Christian nationalism will splinter into 2 groups. There's the traditional Christian nationalists versus the anti-Israel Christian nationalists. In other words, the Nick Fuentes type of people are going to take one side of the Christian national argument, predominantly the anti-Zionist, anti-Israel side, and then the traditional Christian nationalists like myself and others will be on the other side of this argument. Now, somebody asked me the other day, Pastor Cook, are you a Christian nationalist? Well, the way I like to answer that is I'm probably not a Christian nationalist the way the Protestants want to be Christian nationalists, because if that's the case, Baptists always get the short end of the stick. However, the way I like to answer the question, am I a Christian nationalist, is this way. First of all, I'm a Christian, so I have no problem there. I'm vocal about it. I'm also nationalistic. I love our country. So if that makes me a Christian nationalist, then so be it. My fourth prediction was political conservatism will see a realignment with the rise of new podcasters and voices. I really believe that the TPUSA event from a few weeks ago where Daily Caller's Ben Shapiro and Daily Wire's Ben Shapiro, and his speech and the argument that broke out between him and Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and all this kind of stuff. I really believe there's going to be a realignment in 2026, and there'll be a rise of new podcasters and new influencers that I think will take the Republican Party in a more conservative direction, and hopefully in a more centrist direction as well. My fifth prediction was this: California will elect its first Republican governor since 2006. Now, that is where most people think I'm going to get stoned, because if I was a prophet in the Old Testament, according to Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 20, I would probably have to be taken out to the city square and then stoned to death for making a wrong prophecy. Now, again, these are just predictions. These are not prophecies. I'm not a prophet. I've already told you that. But I believe that California is ripe to elect its first Republican governor since 2006. And some would argue we haven't had a Republican governor since Pete Wilson, because a lot of people are kind of down on Arnold Schwarzenegger, especially his second term. His second term was atrocious. He was okay. He was kind of wonky in his first term. But nevertheless, I believe that either Chad Bianco or Steve Hilton will probably be the Republican governor of California. Now, it's very possible this year that a dark horse could come out of the shadows and announce, and probably have enough money to fund their own campaign. But as of right now, we don't know who that individual is, or even if that individual is actually going to come out and make an announcement. But I do think that we will have a Republican governor in California by January of 2027. 6, the woke movement will continue its slow but certain death. I believe that's the case. I think most people are starting to look at things through the lens of common sense, not through some, visceral, emotional movement that condemns racism, but at the same time is racist. And then seventhly, Muslim nationalism will be on the ascent. We're already seeing that in New York City with the election of Mamdani. And then, of course, if you think about a lot of the Muslim influences over cities in Dearborn, Michigan, Minnesota, which, of course, we'll talk about here in the next half hour, Texas and Maine. Everyone's talking about Christian nationalism. Christian nationalism is a boogeyman. Muslim nationalism will be on the ascent in 2026. And then lastly, the Republican Party will win the midterms. Some of you are probably thinking, I don't even know how that's going to be possible, considering we lost New Jersey so handily, we lost Virginia so handily. I'm going to tell you, things are going to turn around. Let me rephrase that. I hope things are going to turn around and the Republican Party will win the midterms. When we return here on Politics in the Pulpit, we'll be joined online by Levi Secord, who is the pastor of Christ Bible Church in Minnesota. And it just so happens that he's going to talk to us about what's happening in the blue state of Minnesota and all things blue, when we return here on your hometown station in just a moment. All right, the Bishop of Santa Clarita here, Pastor Jerry Cook, back with you live on Politics and the Pulpit here on your hometown station. Lots of breaking news today. Our guest that's coming on right now, I actually texted him about a week ago before a lot of this news broke in the last couple of days, and in fact, the news that broke today. So in many ways, I think I'm a prophet here. Pastor Levi Secord is from the great state of Minnesota, which I like to call now the upper Midwest California. He's the pastor of Christ Bible Church. He's not ashamed to venture into the deep waters of politics, both from the pulpit and in person. And he's also the author of a new book entitled Servant Not Savior, an introduction to the Bible's teaching about civil government. Levi, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So tell me, you just posted just a few moments ago, why does everything happen in Minnesota? Well, why does everything happen in Minnesota, Levi?
I was just having this conversation with a group of friends. I mean, it was 2012 or end of 2011 was the last time we had a Republican governor in our state, which really isn't that long ago. But it feels like the last decade plus, we've just spiraled into the deep end. And some of that is the result of more and more conservatives have left Minnesota, and Minnesota has replaced a lot of those conservatives with left-leaning immigrants who vote a certain way. So we've gone from being slightly blue to very deep blue, and it's just bad things just keep happening.
Well, when I think of the 2016 results in Minnesota and then the 2024 results, obviously you guys vote closer to a Republican ticket than California does. I think Trump lost Minnesota by maybe 2.5 points in 2016, and then a little bit under 5 points in 2024. So this does suggest that there is potential for Minnesota to swing in a more red direction. But is the problem like the problem here in California, which is basically the big cities?
Oh yeah, the problem is the cities for sure. Outside of the cities, the state is pretty red. And again, the problem is, and I've written articles on this. We've seen a lot of people flee this state, and it's just as California has. And again, we are the largest population of Somalians outside of the nation of Somalia too. They've got around 70 to 100,000 living in the Twin Cities area. I mean, that shifts a voting bloc a huge amount.
Yeah. Before we get into that, I want you to tell our listeners a little bit about your new book, Levi, called Servant Not Savior, An Introduction to the Bible's Teaching About Civil Government. Tell us a little bit about that book and how the reception has been.
Oh, well, I wrote the book for the Center for Cultural Leadership. It was published here in the fall. And really the goal of the book is we've been having a lot of discussions around political theology. What is the Bible, or how should Christians act politically? And the heart of the book is to do as all good theology should do, which is begin with Scripture. What does the Bible actually say about this? So I walk through 10 primary passages that have shaped Western thought on politics and say, well, what does God require of us in this area of life? And then at the end of it, I try to synthesize that into a coherent application and a worldview way to live it out. And the reception has been really positive. Those who have read it have been really blessed by it. I've spoken with people, including elected representatives across the country who benefited from it, and pastors who are benefiting from it and implementing it into their preaching and teaching.
You know, I kind of regret not being able to make last December's Center for Cultural Leadership 25th anniversary dinner. We would have finally had an opportunity to meet each other as I look eye to eye to you, which I am actually joking a bit because I think you're taller than me, Levi. But my intention was to be there, but unfortunately our Christmas concert at our church was also on the very same day. And so I told Dr. Andrew Sandlin that I will make sure that we're here for the leadership meeting in December of this year. But yeah, unfortunately I did not get to meet you, Levi. But Lord willing, that'll happen sooner than later. Well, you are in the state of Minnesota, and how close are you? How close is the church to Minneapolis?
We're actually just north of St. Paul, probably by like 3-4 miles north of St. Paul. And so Minneapolis is a bit further away, probably 8 to 10 miles.
Gotcha. All right, so you're not too far from the belly of the beast there. But before we get into today's breaking news, let's talk a little bit about the whole voting bloc, as you mentioned, in the Somali community, and your thoughts about all that Governor Walz has done or hasn't done to uproot this whole fraud situation, and speak to our listeners a little bit about just the absolute capsizing of a political career. Because, to be honest with you, Levi, I didn't really know Tim Walz's name prior to him being chosen as a VP for Kamala Harris, and then his ascent was, really big for a moment, and then now he's basically in the water with the sharks. So, talk to us a little bit about Governor Walz, his leadership, and whether or not you think he's doing a job of actually rooting out the fraud.
Oh, he's got no motivation to actually root out the fraud. I mean, so what was it? A few years ago, the Democrats in the state finally had the trifecta. They had the House and Senate and governorship, and by razor thin margins. And we went in this state from having something like $9 billion surplus to now $17 or $18 billion surplus, and now we're like at a $9 billion projected deficit. And so taxes around here, particularly property taxes at the county level, are starting to skyrocket. Everyone's getting really upset because we went from this surplus to this deficit, and then you throw on top of that all of the fraud that maybe we wouldn't be in such a deficit if we weren't being scammed out of our money all the time. It's just been a boondoggle all the way through. I mean, Walz has been a buffoon for a while. I remember the day he was picked as the nominee. I got a text from someone and I was requested to write an article for World Opinions on it. And I just smiled that Harris picked him because the Minnesotans here knew that he was going to be a liability. The media here in Minnesota has never, ever tried to hold this man accountable. And once the national spotlight came on him and he actually got hard questions, and now the national spotlight has stayed with him, we're starting to see more and more of just how terrible of a job he's done. And thank the Lord he is not one heartbeat away from the presidency.
Yeah, I think one of the things I found intriguing about him was the way the Democrats tried to prop him up and give him a facelift, saying that he is the Democrats' answer to masculinity, and they made him a hunter. They made him a hunter. They made him a coach. And I don't know if you remember that clip where he's out there doing a pheasant hunt, and he couldn't load his shotgun, and so. I am automatically assumed a guy that's got that military background. You would think that he could load his shotgun without any problems, but they definitely try to make him over. What say you, Levi?
Well, yeah, they tried to. It's the same thing. I mean, if you look at Tim Walz and you think that's masculinity, it just tells me that you don't understand what men actually respect and are drawn to.
Yeah. He is definitely, on the one hand, he's kind of comical to watch, and just to hear what he has to say. But on the other hand, I'm really glad that you guys are going to dodge a bullet. So, with that said, what are your thoughts about the MyPillow guy, Mike Lindell, running for the Republican nomination there in your state of Minnesota?
Well, I can't say I know Mike very well, his policies or anything. I don't think he's a strong candidate. His presence and President Trump, I know, is nodded at him, but President Trump has a very poor record of picking good nominees in swingy-ish districts and elections. He tends to aim more at loyalty than on people who actually have a proven track record in the state. And so I don't think Lindell, if he got the nomination, would have much of a chance. In fact, I think the Republicans would have had a really good shot if Walz had stayed in the race, and that's probably why he left. Depending on who fills his shoes, it might not matter who runs.
Well, I heard, I'm not terribly certain if this is going to happen, but I heard that Keith Ellison might actually step into his shoes. I don't know if that's the case, but that's what I'd heard just before coming live on air today. And who would Pastor Levi Secord like to see as the Republican nominee in the great state of Minnesota?
Oh, boy. Now you put me on the spot. I mean, Kendall Qualls would be fine. I won't say his name, but there's a representative in Minnesota who I've told people who are behind the scenes that guy should be the one running, but he's not running. And I think he would really stand a good chance. He's very articulate, very strong, and he's got the kind of personality that the Republican ticket I think would need, an energetic presence to draw on voters, but he's not running for whatever reason.
Well, something else happened in your state today, and I'm sure this won't be the end of what happens in the great state of Minnesota, but tensions reach boiling point in Minneapolis as a woman attacks. This is from Red State, as a woman attempts to flee ICE agents in a vehicle, and then of course is neutralized, meaning she was shot dead. Now, the mayor of Minneapolis, who of course is no stranger to problems, Mayor Fry, this is what he had to say, and we took out the expletive. Listen to what Mayor Fry has to say here in reference to this shooting.
There's little I can say, again, that'll make this situation better, but I do have a message for our community, for our city, and I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis.
All right. That's Mayor Fry. Do you think he wants to start a riot?
I mean, they're playing politics, and it's gonna result in riots, of course, right? They're trying to drum up their base and make the other side look bad. I've seen a lot of the videos of the incident. I think I've learned enough, and hopefully we all have, though we clearly haven't, that we should all be really slow to rush to judgment on any of these things. I saw one video that looked really bad for the ICE agents, like, why would you do that? then I saw another video that made it seem pretty clear that she hit that agent with the front of her car, right? And if you do that, am I happy she got shot? No. This is a really sad situation. Shouldn't have happened. But if that angle is accurate, which I don't have reason to think it's not, but if she hit him with the front of her car, I don't know what else you expect to happen.
You know, I agree with you.
The type of rhetoric that's been used by our leadership towards ICE, is it any surprise people are treating them that way? I mean, and then I saw these videos with them throwing lots of snowballs at them, and you're like, oh, it's only snowballs, but it's still technically assault of a federal agent. Like, you don't get to just do those things.
No, I completely agree. In fact, I saw 3 or 4 videos and 3 or 4 different angles, and I agree with you. There was at least 2 videos that I thought maybe the ICE agents acted with over-aggression, to say the least. And then I saw another one just literally before I came on the air that made it seem like, one of them made contact with the vehicle as the woman was fleeing. And I think the Democrats, and the left in particular, has done a good job basically painting the ICE agents as basically Trump's Gestapo. You know, or if to use a Star Wars metaphor, they're the stormtroopers. And so they've done such an effective job of painting them as such that they are afraid of them and they want nothing to do with them. In fact, if we compare what happened in Texas a few weeks ago with some of the ICE agents, and even here in California where they're blocking ICE agents from entering detention centers, it seems like this is a tinderbox ready to go up. And I think men like Mayor Fry in Minneapolis are wanting to just throw a match on that tinderbox. What say you, Pastor Levi Secord?
Yeah, I'm not sure he wants to throw a match on it, but I think he's being irresponsible. I think he wants to rile up his base, right? But I don't. I mean, what good is it going to do him if Minneapolis burns again?
Well, the good thing is it's winter, right?
What we saw in the summer of 2020 was, when did public sentiment start to turn against the George Floyd stuff? When they started burning towns down.
Yeah.
So it's like if they go out and they riot in Minneapolis again and destroy stuff, they're not actually helping their cause at all. So, but the good news is it's January in Minnesota. It's not summer, so
exactly.
It's harder to riot in January.
Yeah, a little chillier now than it would be like in July. So, wanted to get your quick takeaway concerning the weekend's big news. It's amazing how the news cycle just turns over so quickly. But your quick takeaways concerning the Maduro arrest there in Venezuela. And what do you say to those conservatives out there who are criticizing this arrest as nothing more than neocon regime change? Your thoughts about that?
I mean, it might be. It really might be neocon regime change, but it seems to be minus actually trying to occupy and nation build. Right? And that was, I think, the biggest problems we had with what went on in Iraq and Afghanistan was no end goal, and we poured billions and billions of dollars into it. I was very much in favor of Trump's strike on Iran. I don't think you get to threaten to annihilate a nation while seeking nuclear bombs. I think you can do that without consequences. So with Venezuela, I think what they were doing and what he was doing has connected to the cartels and sending drugs over here, killing thousands and thousands upon Americans. Obviously, those Americans have some role in that because they're choosing to take the drugs, but this is an act of aggression. Trump gave that guy lots of off-ramps, and he picked a fight, and he didn't think Trump was going to do it, and his bluff got called. I have no sympathy for the man. If Trump were to send in thousands of troops and try to rebuild that nation with with billions of our dollars, I would be very much against it, but this is a very surgical move, and therefore I'm mostly okay with it.
And I think I'm with you on that, Levi. I think I'm mostly okay with it, and I'm just hoping that that President Trump is not taking a page out of the early 2000s neocon playbook here. Let's hope that he does not do that. Very quickly, before we come to the end of this section here on the radio show, what's on the horizon for Christ Bible Church in 2026?
Well, we gather on the Lord's Day. We sing songs and hymns together, and we take communion every week, and we hear the Word preached, and we seek to live it out. So we have a lot of that going on every Sunday. yeah, we got a conference coming up again in the fall. You know, the usual ministry life.
Great, great. And if people want to purchase your book, Servant Not Savior, an introduction to the Bible's teaching about civil government, where could they purchase it, Pastor Levi?
Amazon's the best place.
Okay, Amazon. What's the price of the book?
I think it's $10 for the Kindle and $20 for paperback.
Excellent. And you got any other books that you're eyeballing in the next year or two?
Well, yeah, we'll keep that under wraps for now. It's a long ways away.
Pastor Levi Secord, pastor of Christ Bible Church and author of Servant Not Savior, an introduction to the Bible's teaching about civil government. Thank you so much for calling in today, and Lord bless you as you serve the Lord up there in Minnesota.
Thanks for having me.
All right. When we return here on your hometown station, we'll give you some final thoughts. All right, we're back here for our final segment of Politics in the Pulpit on your hometown station. I wanted to devote this last segment to a horrible bill that was passed by the California Senate in 2024 that is going to be enacted this year in 2026. And this bill prohibits local governments from requiring voters to show identification at polling places. In other words, overriding local attempts like Huntington Beach Measure A, if you remember that, to impose their own voter ID rules because it addresses a statewide concern of election integrity and uniformity, applying to all cities, excluding charter cities, and affirming existing state election processes like signature verification. So, what are the key provisions and purpose of this SB 1174? Well, it prohibits local voter ID mandates. It stops cities and districts from making voters show ID to cast a ballot at any polling place or vote center. Now, you've got to ask yourself a question out there. Why would anybody not want to see an ID to cast a ballot at a polling place? What would be the purpose of prohibiting that, other than the potential for fraud? I mean, at least the potential, right? Here's the other key provision and purpose: statewide application. It declares voter ID a matter of statewide concern, ensuring it applies to all cities regardless of their charter status, and then election integrity cites existing state laws as sufficient for integrity, preventing voter disenfranchisement, often associated with voter ID laws. This was actually signed way back in 2024, and you've had several cities trying to kind of upend this, and Huntington Beach being one of them, which the voters there approved Measure A, which would have allowed the city to require voter ID. Now, this goes to show you the built-in racism within certain segments of the Democratic Party and the left in general. They are assuming, because what they're trying to do here, without saying it, is that black people don't have ID and that they can't go to the DMV and get an ID, or that black people don't have driver's licenses, or that black people don't know how to search through a computer to find something. I just don't understand how those within the African American community are still so heavily invested in the Democratic Party, but they don't realize how they're being played by that same party. I really hope and pray that 2024 was a bit of a turning point for a lot of the African Americans who ended up voting across party lines to vote for President Trump, because obviously he got a larger share of the black male vote than he did in 2016. And also, it seems as if more and more black males are trending towards more conservative principles. And by the way, most of them are more conservative in theory and in practicality. And in fact, the principles and the foundation of the conservative movement is far more conducive to their mores and their morals than is the Democratic Party, especially with all of the absolute lunacy that they are advocating for when it comes to same-sex marriage and butchering our kids under the guise of gender-affirming care. And so this particular bill needs to be upended. Again, California Senate Bill 1174, which is horrible. And so the reason why I started off in the first half hour with some of my predictions for 2026 is if, in fact, we do get a Republican governor in 2027, I believe starting this year, as that governor is candidating, as that Republican candidate is candidating to be governor, whether it be Steve Hilton, whether it be Chad Bianco, whether it be Daniel Mercury, or any of these other candidates that are viable and running, they need to say, if you put me in office, I am going to veto, I'm going to scrap SB 1174, and we're going to get voter ID on the ballot. And that's what's happening with Carl DeMaio and his voter ID initiative. Some of you have seen Carl coming into your town and holding ID signing parties and all that kind of wonderful stuff. To me, if you need an ID to open a checking account, if you need an ID to board a plane, if you need an ID, you name it. There's so many things you need. I went to the urgent care earlier today to pick up some information that I have to give to my primary doctor next Thursday. And in order to get that information, I had to show them my identification. I had to show them my driver's license. I couldn't just open my wallet. She actually requested that I take my driver's license out and hand it to her. Should I have started yelling disenfranchisement because she asked me for my voter ID? It is absolutely silly, folks. And if you're out there listening and you're an African American and you're still voting on the Democratic plantation, I really think you need to rethink your situation going forward, because the party that you think is for you is actually technically not for you. They are treating you as if you don't know about voter ID and you don't know about having a driver's license. And so I really need you to rethink this going forward. So if you're Chad Bianco, if you're Steve Hilton, if you're Daniel Mercury, you need to be running from Southern California to Central California to Northern California saying, if you elect me, we will make sure voter ID is on the ballot and we will upend Senate Bill 1174. But you've got to start now. You've got to start now. And you've got to take bigger pieces of the pie and stop playing footsie. And I'm talking to guys like Chad Bianco. I'm talking to guys like Steve Hilton. And to a lesser degree, Daniel Mercury, who is an acquaintance of mine that lives over in Simi Valley, that I think would probably do this on day one should he become the governor. And so let's hope and pray that sanity prevails the end of this year in November. And also, one last thing. It's very possible that Proposition 50 could be overturned, even though everyone's running as if the party lines are the same, and then they'll be redistricted in January of 2027. It is very possible that those lines could remain the same if it goes to the Supreme Court. So 2026 is definitely going to be an interesting year. Monitor what's happening in Minneapolis tonight. Hopefully there's no riots in the city. And so we'll catch you next week, same bat time, same bat channel. The Bishop of Santa Cruz saying thanks for listening and tuning in to Politics in the Pulpit here on your hometown station.